Right, it's another episode of Podhalla, a pre-WNBA Draft episode of Podhalla, and I guess you could say a pre-WNBA free agency announcement, deal signing announcement edition of Podhalla as well, because I think sometime this weekend and Monday and early next weekend, we're gonna see a lot of news and traction for things, about the WNBA. So, Brian, we recorded an interview with, Conrado Pascual, and that is gonna play at the end of this episode. We talked draft, we talked Valkyries free agency, we talked current players. So we'll save most of that chat for the interview with Conrado. But I guess I do want to just mention, um, the reserved qualifying offers. Me here, Veronica Burton, Caitlin Chen, Rupert, Salon, Zandalicini, all were extended qualifying offers that just sort of had to happen or was going
Mhm.
to. So not really news there, but that is really kind of the newest Valkyries information as we wait until the draft and as we wait until free agency. Do you have a feel? Is there a thought that maybe they do sign somebody? Maybe they're able to bring somebody in. One of your main targets, Jackie Young. The rumor or the report is that she's more than likely re-signing for the max with her current Aces team, so she would be theoretically off the table as that goes to fruition. But do you think we're actually going to see somebody, or do you think it's going to be maybe a lesser player, not a top tier kind of player, or are we just going to get depth pieces and rely on what we have and some of the young players coming in as well as this current draft?
I don't wanna spoil too much because we talk about it in the Conrado interview, but I do feel like they are going to get someone, in an all-star caliber player or a all-star potential caliber player if they haven't yet been an all-star, but, I think they feel like they missed out last year, and I think they thought they were gonna get people, and then they didn't, and then they just went on and put on tape just like, a whole thing to free agents of like, "You guys missed out. You guys shoulda came here." And, I think, when you hear stuff going on, like there was legit just an interview with, I think it Rebecca Allen who was talking about her situation with the Chicago Sky and that in when they were literally like sharing maybe some type of practice like change room with like regular people. And so like just and I'm saying that just to say like the Valkyries have like top of the line stuff. They have a practice
Hmm.
facility that's completely dedicated to Valkyries only in Oakland. And then, they have the Chase Center that they share with the Warriors. They have their own locker rooms. Like I think that stuff does go a long way. It's something that we talked about leading up to the free agency. And although free agency's been kind of a slow start, I guess, and when I say that, I just mean that we don't have like the Shams Woj that's just like has their hands on, or people just reaching out to them and like reporting stuff. Like that's not as there in the WNBA yet. So, and or maybe the WNBA just doesn't tamper as much as the NBA does on a regular basis. But we don't. It feels like it's came out a little slow. But I still think they're going to get someone. And I would be pretty surprised if they didn't because I just feel like it was if I was a free agent, I would be like, okay, so I could leave this potential current situation that just doesn't have like the facilities and the amenities that this other franchise has, and they haven't given out their max contract yet, so I could just grab that.
Hmm.
And honestly kind of coming from a more dire point of like if we get later into the free agency and the Valkyries still haven't gotten someone, I still think there could be like a little project Hail Mary person they can add to their roster near the end there if they still haven't really dished out a max salary slot. I would be pretty surprised. I would love to see the stories on if they don't land someone. I'm like, what the hell went wrong?
Yeah, that would be crazy because Joe Lacob, just being Joe Lacob, he kind of invites the criticism if he doesn't land something. So there has been some other non-Valkyries news. Obviously, the it feels like it was forever ago, but it really wasn't. South Carolina, they go and beat UConn in the upset of the year, and then they get blasted by UCLA. UCLA wins the women's national champion. and then they danced. And then the trades that have happened in the WNBA so far. Angel Reese goes to Atlanta. And you and I did I think it was a YouTube short sometime last year when she started to have some issues with Chicago. We were like, I wonder if would the Valks be interested in Angel? And here she is. She's going to go to Atlanta. She's going to play with some actual bigs. And in return, Chicago gets a 2027 and a 2028 first round pick and a second round pick swap. And as you'll hear in the conversation with Conrado, kind of interesting because those two drafts are probably going to be bigger with bigger, higher ceiling talent than this current one. So to trade those picks is kind of an interesting thing. What did you think about Angel getting moved?
I thought that, I think we had maybe come to the conclusion in the YouTube reel or YouTube short that we did that like maybe, the Valkyries wouldn't be in play for an Angel Reese, but shoot, at that price, like Angel Reese is who you want to get from the 2027 first, the 2028 first. Like that's who you're hoping to draft. And like, I just don't like her value to me is just way more than the return they got. And that feels like it kind of feels like Chicago, even though we've only been really covering the WNBA for 2.5 years, and I've been paying attention for maybe 3 to 4. It feels like the Chicago Sky are just like kind of far and away the most poverty organization in the league, and just in terms of like how the just like the most mind scratching, head scratching moves that they make. It's just like why did you do that? How did you come to that conclusion? How many times I kind of looked a little bit into Jeff Pagliuca, who's their, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing the GM right, but the GM's last name right, but that's who their GM is. And it sounds like his previous background, and I don't know how many times this happens in the W or the NBA, but it looks like he was one of those like NBA college men's basketball, just like trainers, like summer trainers or off-season trainers, where you see those videos of like a player just like putting up reps. We saw those Jonathan Kuminga videos over the summer of like him working out in Florida. Like he was like one of those trainers, and to go from that position to the general manager just feels like completely different field. And I don't know how often it happens, but that's who Chicago's general manager is right now. But yeah, clearly not working out, because I think when there's a star player that's being traded, it's usually like an older star player, and it's like what the Warriors were going through with Giannis, where it's like we need all of your draft capital, and we also need young players in return to make this make sense for us. And Angel's not at like the Giannis level, of course, but she's also like in her second year, and she is the young player. So it's like, what is the return like for the star young player at her level? And it's definitely way more than what I would have happily given up that price for the Valkyries, because that is who you try to get. It's not guaranteed in the draft that the players are going to turn out the way that Angel turns out. I would 100% have done it, even though those two draft classes are supposed to be a little loaded. You'd hope that with Angel, like, we're just a consistent playoff team.
Yeah, you gotta wonder, do they expect Atlanta to fade to where those picks are like top 3 or top 4, because that's where the value is going to be if they're not, the WNBA is going to expand to what, 18 teams in the next 4 years.
Weren't they like the number 2 or 3 team in the league last year, and they just added Angel Reese? Like, I don't think we can justify Chicago's thinking that much. Like, you can't say like, I wonder if they were thinking. Like, I don't know if they were thinking. I don't know if they were thinking. This is where we need more coverage in the W, because like, where are the 5 articles out there that, like, I know there have been some, like I think Annie Costable might have done one, and someone else might have done one, Alexa Philippou might have done one, but like just that Marcus Thompson piece, that just like that column that just goes in and like really analyzes what was going on that whole time.
Diamond Miller was traded from the Dallas Wings to the Connecticut Sun for Raya Marshall. That was
UCLA,
another move.
USD center with Juju and Kiki last year.
So another move, and then there was a reported move, Ariel Atkins for Rickea Jackson. I don't think that's actually been finalized. It might just be a heavy rumor at this point, but I've seen that one as well. So there is movement, and we'll see what happens in Valkyries land.
Still no
So
Valkyries trade ever, right? We still have not ever made a trade.
no, I don't
First
think
one's
so.
got to go crazy.
Yeah, the first one it's going to be historic because it'll be their first trade ever.
It's gonna just be like Caitlin Chen for a 3rd-round pick or something.
So when we talk to Conrado, we go through some questions that came from the Discord, because the Discord's kind of been on fire this last week. And if you want to join the Discord and talk Valkyries hoops and other Bay Area sports, the link is in the podcast write up, as well as the YouTube video. So come hang out with us and chit chat. Monday, I imagine, will be pretty lively. I'll actually be on vacation, but I'll be checking in with folks. So yeah. All right. Anything else before we throw it to the interview with Conrado?
Just throw it to the interview, man.
All right. So let's talk to Conrado Pascual of the Center Hub. Now joining us is Conrado Pascual, who has been on this show before, and Brian and I have used his work to reference his mock drafts prior. And, I think the main difference between your mock drafts and every other mock draft that is out there is you've been holding firm that AZ Fudd is your number one choice. Even when the Awa Fam stuff came out, you still had her over Awa. Now, I've seen Awa slip in some mock drafts. And we've also seen AZ slip in some mock drafts. Where do you stand right now with your mock draft as we are just a few days in the NBA, a few days away from the WNBA draft?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me back. I'm actually more of a big board guy as opposed to mock draft, but I mean, in the spirit of the occasion, I finally participated in one mock draft. So I actually released that with some of my my coworkers at the Center Hub. We released part 1 of our mock draft, which is basically just the lottery and the 2 expansion teams. And yeah, we still have AZ Fudd at number 1. So to give that update, yeah, still I would say firm, but I mean, if you had taken a look at my big boards throughout this draft cycle, I have AZ and Awa Fam in the same tier, and that's not me just trying to sit on the fence, but I feel like they each offer something so appealing to any teams that they both kind of warrant consideration for the top pick. I think you could easily make a compelling argument for either of them. But as it pertains to AZ, for me, I kind of watched, or I did watch the previous episode where Brian was kind of discussing his thoughts on Awa Fam and AZ, and I don't necessarily disagree with any of them. I think the thing about for me though is when we talk about upside, are you talking about an individual player's upside, or are you talking about the team's upside? Because ultimately, right, I mean, basketball is a game of 5-on-5. It's not just 5 one-on-one matchups. And so I just feel that AZ, I mean, everyone will definitely refer to spacing, gravity, but again, just the overall connectivity that she provides a team. And for me specifically, I don't find any, even the players at the top of this draft class, I don't think any of them by themselves are true franchise players. At best, I see the top of the draft class as really great 1Bs, maybe overqualified number 2 options. And so because of that, again, I try to look at which player can potentially bring the most lineup versatility, which player allows for the team to play different styles. So for me, AZ just has so much portability, right? It doesn't matter what kind of system, what kind of style, what kind of play you're trying to execute. She can be involved in it. Not to say that Awa Fam can't. It's just that's kind of where I am with it. So yeah, AZ is still 1. Awa Fam is number 2. They're definitely firmly my 1-2 in this draft class.
I feel like we're a little separated, or just it's been a year, a little over a year since we saw them last play together. But so it was an argument, I feel in the early part of the draft cycle, but it just hasn't been used as of late, in the fact that we've seen Paige and AZ win at the highest level that they could win at the time. And, so it would make sense to pair them together again. And, I feel like, and I don't know how you, feel about this, but I guess I feel like it's something I've been thinking about probably a while ago, and then it just came back. But like, as Warriors fans, like, we watched Klay Thompson, and I kind of feel like, to me, like, AZ is just like one of those shooters where it's just like, I almost remember in like when Klay won the 3-point contest, Andre Iguodala finally said like, "Oh, the best 3-point shooter in the world won the 3-point contest,"
Yeah.
and it was Klay that won it. And Klay just has like the purest form, and I feel like that's how I feel when I watch AZ. It just looks like the purest form. It looks like how your coaches teach you how to shoot it. Whereas Steph's looks like more fluid and like off the ball, and like Paige's feels like more off the ball. But like AZ's and Klay's is just like, oh, they're like catch and shoot demons, like some. All those other ways you can like just catch the ball and shoot it, whether it's leaning, fading, like that, it just looks like picture perfect. And I don't think anyone is denying AZ's 3-point shooting ability. And I think I've basically deferred to you in terms of who should go number one, as similar as your co-host in the draft pod, where he was just like, I'm not as tapped as you are. So I think that I do feel though this draft has had, when's like the last time that it's been so much discussion for number one? And like, I've seen, since UCLA won the tournament, I feel like I've seen like 3, sometimes even 4 players. Like, I think I saw one Lauren Betts number one mock draft, and I was like, I feel like it's the only one I've seen, and maybe the only one I will see. But I've seen some Olivia at one, similar to the reason you brought up on the show, with just, I guess, Paige, a true point guard. Maybe you want to pair her with a more of a point guard, or Awa, of course, because of 6'4" and can pass the ball with the IQ that she has. And, then AZ, of course. Like, how, when's the last time it's been like this?
Yeah, I mean, again, even though you could say like Awa Pham and Lauren Betts are both centers, like, again, the manner in which they play the position could not be any more different, right? So yes, like the players that we all believe, and then you factor in Olivia Miles, the players that you believe could be in consideration for the number one pick. I mean, they're all so very different. That's the thing about doing a big board as opposed to mock draft, because even though like I published my first big board like after the NBA or the WNBA draft lottery was confirmed or established, I still had like AZ and Awa 1-2, in the sense that, like, again, just in the proverbial vacuum, kind of like, who do you like? Who do you think can offer you the most? Who do you think can, help amplify what the team, or perhaps what the team's franchise player does best? So that's kind of how I've approached it. But again, you could make a very compelling argument for a lot of those. I agree with you, Brian. I think at this point, I would be surprised if Dallas took anyone who isn't Awa Pham or AZ. And that's no shade to Lauren Betts or Olivia Miles, but again, I think just in terms of what they do stylistically, not sure that those two players pair as nicely or as fluidly with Paige Beckers.
Now, ever since we started paying attention to the mock drafts this year, AZ and Awa were 1-2 or 2-1.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this past week, we started to see some differences. Like Brian said, Olivia Miles, number one. I saw a mock draft today by Sabrina Merchant where she had AZ drop to 4. And in that same mock draft, she wrote that it was a bit of a toss-up between AZ and Kiki for her at 4. So I'm kind of wondering, why do you think all of a sudden after the tournament that AZ has shown movement? Because pre-tournament she was at least a solidified number 2, and in some cases number 1. Do you think that this has something to do with what some of these reporters are hearing from the teams? Does it have something to do with how she played in the tournament? Do you have any sense to why maybe folks are thinking that she's dropping?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, these mock drafts, the reason why I don't really put too much weight into mock drafts, even the ones I do myself, right? It's because we're trying to make either educated guesses on what we believe the front offices would do, or what we would do. And obviously we're not the front offices, so I mean, you take all this with a grain of salt. I just like to look at them and kind of gather different perspectives, and try to see why these writers would associate those players with these specific teams. But with regards to like AZ kind of going up and down in the lottery, and even Kiki going up and down, maybe in the opposite direction, kind of going up a little bit. I mean, I do think there's a certain element of recency bias, but I think that's where, media fans are different than executives, general managers and scouts, right? Their evals aren't based on one grade or on one game or one tournament. It's not even based on one season's worth of data. It's, it's an eval based on multiple years, right? I mean, they're going to go back probably all the way to, in terms of like collegiate players, they're going to go all the way back to like their high school days. And, in terms of like the international players, like their junior club, days, or U16 play, but I think if if a player like, say, Kiki Rice is kind of ascending these mock drafts, I think it's more, I want to give Kiki Rice. I'm very high on her. I think it's, more like she has continued to show at the highest level that her level of play is sustainable, and kind of showing like a little bit more adaptability, with regards to lineups and game situation. So, and the same thing with Lauren Betts, I think she basically, I mean, I wouldn't say she went out of her way to prove people wrong, but I think there were just like a lot of assumptions about her game that people kind of thought because of like her, her biometrics or her overall general player archetype, that there are certain things that she couldn't do. And yet she did those things and she did them consistently. So I think that's kind of where it gives, these writers and these analysts a little bit of room to, kind of reconsider, their rankings.
I think I was one of those people who assumed on Lauren Betts' archetype. Those past couple games, man, I was just like, can someone just like, it feels like everyone was just going right at Betts. Like that's exactly what she wants you to do. She wants you to go right at her. That's going to work. But even when she was getting switched out into the perimeter and she was able to defend out there, but also some of that was, I kind of felt like maybe South Carolina didn't have spacing correctly. Like how many Okot threes were taken, another big took a three, and I was just like, this is perfect for Betts. And I do feel like I was a little lower on the archetype, whereas as now I'm just like, okay, like what the hell was I talking about?
I mean, I think earlier actually in the tournament, the game against UCLA's game versus Oklahoma State, I think that was some of like her best game film in terms of her ability to just be switched on to like fast, shiftier guards and like really contain them, not chase them around, but literally contain them. That's what I'm saying. I have, as I said, like, I'm glad you tuned in to my last podcast, Indie Basketball, but, Lauren has been playing essentially, right? Like UCLA's championship lineup was essentially 4 guards and Lauren. I mean, at the WNBA level, she will get the opportunity to play with other bigs, right? With like a true power forward, and a long wing, that'll only just further amplify what she does best, So, I mean, I think there's, again, even though I said I don't think any of them are franchise players, I think they all bring something really unique, like at an elite level.
All right, we asked for some questions in our Discord. Okay. Now, there are 3 draft questions and then one more Valks question. And then we'll talk about this, and then we'll go into kind of who is available for the Valks. I know that you did your mock but it only went through, what was it, the first 7 picks?
Yeah.
Well, you're saving the Valks pick, but we can still talk about it.
Yeah, no.
And then we can all kind of, give our predictions on who we think might be available. But like I said, with all the movement in the mocks, it's kind of interesting to see. Not that it means anything, just the idea that these writers may be hearing things about, some of the movement as well. So I think it'll make for an exciting Monday for sure. Okay, this one comes from Beezy in the Discord, Who has the most upside in the draft of players who might be around when the Valkyries pick?
Okay. Anyone who's followed me knows that I am extremely high on Spanish guard Iana Martin. And this was even before we lost Carla late in the expansion draft. Again, depending on some mock drafts, as Brian was saying, right, there's some that have Iana Martin like going last in the first round. There are some that recently had her going up as high as 6. For me personally, I think she's closer. Like, I think her upside is closer to that of, like, say, an Olivia Miles. I don't even think she's necessarily raw. I mean, yeah, she's younger. I think there's been like for those that are kind of like at least somewhat skeptical or hesitant to take her, like say like around the expansion draft range, or the expansion teams range. I think they usually cite her strength, kind of like average athleticism, but I don't know. I see that as a positive. I mean, her game is not strength based. It's not speed based. That's not to say that she's slow and weak, but again, she has arguably one of the best pick and roll point guards in this draft class, probably right there with Olivia. Again, just highly decorated and experienced playing, in both EuroLeague and FIBA competition. Just a very cerebral player who I've been on other podcasts and I said the same thing, right? If she's available at 8, she's not going to make it to the Valks in the second round. And again, if you're talking about you want to chase that upside, I really like Iana Martin's upside.
Brent, you have any thoughts on that one?
I mean, yeah, I think I've spoken a little bit about Iana on this podcast, and I remember watching her. I think the first time was Eurobasket, and then I think she went down with like some type of injury or maybe some type of medical condition a little bit way through that tournament. But you could just see like how talented she was pretty early. Even that game against the U.S., just a couple weeks ago, like I don't remember what her final stat line was, but I just remember seeing like a fearlessness, and I feel like that might be the only thing that her and Carla have in common is just like smaller guard fearlessness. But I feel like she's pretty talented around the perimeter, where Carla was just trying to dive into the rim and show that her fearlessness to get to the bucket. And I think Iana's really talented, and I wonder, like, we have someone who was in the front office that's now in Portland that I imagine thinks a similar way. In Vanya Cernovich, and I wonder if she gets taken there, or if there's another, Anel Angloma that's also been mocked to the Valkyries, if that's where she gets taken too. I kind of feel like Portland goes international, but that's purely because of who the GM is. So I don't know. Yeah, no, I like the pick.
Yeah. Sure. And Nell Angloma, I'm glad you mentioned. She's also one I would have also offered as an answer to this question. I know you guys have talked about her. Like, I think you had an entire show or segment about Nell Angloma. And I think you had some great opinions. To me, like, she's classified as a guard. I don't think she's a guard. I personally think she's more of a wing. I think she's still growing. I think she'll ultimately be more of like kind of a power guard, if not a power wing. Her game is a lot like predicated again, right? Trying to put pressure on the rim, slashing, getting inside, finishing around the rim or around the basket. It's just a very unique game overall. You don't see that type of combination of skills in any one player. And I think that's kind of where like a lot of the intrigue comes. I would definitely not be against it if the Valks selected her, or we're definitely considering her in that range. So.
All right, next
I
question.
think my only now worry, though, just like kind of keeping on the Nell thing for just one more point is, and I don't know, you might have heard us say it already if you listened to the one segment, but I kind of am worried about, like, now there's like a new addition to this, where at first I was like, do you want, you have U-State coming in, right? Who's essentially going to be a rookie who, maybe has some defensive questions. And I just wonder, like, you bring in Nell Angloma, who has like, big 3-point questions. Like, I wonder if you classify any of them or both of them as projects. And do you want both? Do you want to, we've us three being also from the Bay Area, seeing how the Warriors kind of 2 timeline thing played out. And you just want to like dedicate, 2 rookies Like, I'm just like, dude, don't you just
You're
want to
talking
put
about like
in
the developmental process
developmental
of
focus?
having two
Like,
young players.
I
like
would
that.
almost be worried about having like two potential projects and having like to split the developmental focus, which is sometimes where I lean. And I know with the draft, it's like best player available. But like leaning towards players who might be able to come in and contribute right away, whether that be Gabriela Jaquez, whether that be Raven Johnson, where you just know the defense is there and you know the 3-point shot might come along if it's not already. But just like I'm worried about just like I want all the eggs in the U Stay basket. And I'm worried that if Nell came, it would be like, you know, trying to make both work. Because I don't think Nell would do the U Stay thing where you stay in France for or whatever league she's going to be in and come in the following year because of the money's different. You know, she's not sitting on $66,000. She's going to be missing out on 300, you know, 300,000.
Right. No, I think that's a fair point. I'm not gonna say concern. I think it's a fair point, right? I guess the only thing I would say, or not the only, but if I were to assuage those concerns, is that I don't really see Stay as much of a project as some people think. I think she's going to be new to the WNBA. That's obvious. And sure, I suppose there's an acclimation period for anyone new coming to the league, but I think her game is a lot more polished, you know, specifically like her shot creation. What's great is that, you know, again, when she was going through her draft cycle, she being Stay, we talked about her as potentially having the ability to play point. I don't think she'll ever truly be like an exclusive point guard in the WNBA, certainly not for the Valkyries. But again, what has Natalie Nakase been asking for? Right? She wants more playmakers. She wants more people who can actually create with the ball. So even if she's not the primary, you know, like facilitator or playmaker, she has that ability to, you know, kind of create when the ball swings to her. So I actually think she's going to step into a role. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just feel like there's less developmental. I'm with you on Nell because, again, I'm high on what I believe her player archetype could be, but I do think it's going to take time. If that's truly what they want her to be, like what we've seen her do in France, then it's going to take time for her to acclimate. Because, I mean, she will probably have some speed. She's very springy, like a speed advantage, you know, but again, she can't just expect to power through defenders, you know, like she did overseas.
All right, next question from Sugo says, which positions do you think the Valks are trying to upgrade? Are they fixing weaknesses or doubling down on strengths? Now, this could be draft, this could be free agent question as well, but so take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll try to, you know, fix their weaknesses through both, realistically. Actually, on my podcast, East Meets West, you know, Valks insider Kenzo Fukuda and I were talking just about this. We said the three areas that they have made clear they need to address. They want more shot creation, like legitimate shot creation off the dribble. We saw how much, like, when things bogged down in the half court, there was no ball movement. There was nothing. We're hoisting up, right? Like highly contested threes. Then they want like legitimate 3-point shooting. Obviously, bringing Chechi and Ileana back is great. We're not taking a step back, but they want to add more to that. Then I think we need a true interior presence, right? And that's, again, no shade to Temi Fagbenle or Monique Billings, right? But we do need someone who is more of a kind of consistent option, you know, around the rim on both ends. We'd ideally like a more traditional rim protector. Kenzo seems to think that their priority is like the first priority of those three is shot creation. So, you know, maybe like a guard or wing to pair VB with, you know. KT is great, but KT, you know, having her try to split the defense off the dribble, that's not really her thing. You know, we saw what's great when she can kind of get downhill and then kind of, you know, take her one-on-one matchup. So Kenzo thinks they should be going after, you know, like a guard or wing. Is that you know, let's throw out a couple names, right? Is that like a Satu Sabali? Obviously, right before we hopped on here, Jackie Young said she's going back to the Aces, so we have to take her off the board. Maybe Kalea Copper. She wasn't cored. You know, someone of that ilk. I think the area of weakness they need to fix, in my opinion, what they should be fixing first is center. Now that's going to have to come through free agency. As Brian was saying on previous episodes, it's not the deepest center draft class. Like center is not the deepest position in this draft class. Definitely not going to find the same caliber of center at pick 8. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if Ohema and Natalie are going to be very aggressive in trying to entice one of these free agent centers to come to the Bay.
Hold your
Would you
thoughts
trade
on
straight up the number 8 pick for Ezi Magbagor? And would Seattle even take that?
I mean, number 8. I mean, I could imagine they'd at least consider it. I think that's actually good value for a player if she's saying she doesn't want to return.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that actually is pretty good value relative to, you know, given that, you know, the Valks would be willing to pay her what she believes she's worth. So
True. Can I jump? Were you going to jump to the next question? I kind of had a follow up here.
Please. No, go ahead. You can follow up.
So I was going to ask you before you brought up Satu, is I think you and Kenzo did your podcast before Satu put out that Instagram post that she was not going to return to Phoenix, I think.
Right.
But I'm almost wondering, like, you don't like, of course, Satu's really talented. I just feel like that position is like the one I'm least worried about with, you know, the rotating forward rotation of whether it be KT and Janelle to start, whether it be Janelle and Chechi to start, like those three, KT, Janelle, Chechi, and even Ileana Rupert when she plays the 4 next to a 5. Like, I just feel like that 3-4 is like, that's kind of the position I feel like I'm least worried about. But I understand, like, you don't deny a talent like Satu. I'm with you that, like, you know, you threw out Jackie, you threw out, I know Jackie's gone now, but you threw out Kalia Copper. Those are my two. Those are the ones where I'm like, can we throw the bag at them? And also with the 5, I tossed around Ezi Magbagor before she was cored. Naz Hillman, who I believe is a restricted free agent, and then Alana Smith after she made her announcement. And I want to say there was one more. Oh, I liked Shakira Austin too, but just like an upgrade at the 5. I think we're on the same page there. But yeah, would you, if Satu was like, I want to come, do you pay her? Like, do you say come? Like, you're talented without a doubt. Like, you'd be the most talented player on the team.
I mean, I definitely would seriously consider it. The thing is, though, again, like, I mean, let's see, VB will get paid, but I mean, for the most part, we don't have any other, we don't really have any other max salaries on our cap sheet, or we're not expecting to, right? Like, Chechi is not going to command that. So, I mean, I think we could actually bring in 2 max players.
Agreed.
So that's why if Satu's one of them, cool. I'm with you, though. I would try to investigate, see which of these guards or wings, like true guard or wings, are available first, while also, again, right, canvassing the open market for centers, because all those options that you listed, I like pretty much all of them. You know, I think they all bring something really unique to the table, and definitely something that we didn't have last season. So I'd be down.
Okay.
I like our centers too, but yeah, I think the upgrade's probably needed.
You know, there was right before I hopped on, one of my peers, Najee Simmons, he does a lot of analytics for like both NBA, WNBA, you know, and he posted a graph of, like, in terms of all the players who had defended A'ja Wilson last year. He showed the number of possessions that they defended A'ja straight up, and then how many points they conceded. Right? Temi was like, Temi was actually right kind of in the middle. She actually wasn't that bad, you know. And I tweeted that, like, the level of production that Temi gave is actually pretty good. It's pretty good for a backup center. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I think she was definitely overtaxed starting, you know, and it's not just the total minutes, but how long each shift is, you know, and that's why, like, I would be more than happy to if she came back, but I would prefer there's someone ahead of her on the depth chart, you know.
Agreed.
All right. Put a pin in the Kayla Thornton thing. We'll come back at the last question, but Our second to last question is from Killicam. Do you see the Valks trading up or down? And who are the players worth trading up for? Now, I'm not saying, this is just based off of the mock drafts. Well, when you see someone like AZ Fudd drop in a mock and you're like, oh my gosh, she's not in the top 3. Now, I don't know, I don't know that the Valkyries are interested in giving away future assets to move up in a draft. I don't even know if I don't know historically if this has happened too often in a WNBA draft, but theoretically, if AZ all of a sudden fell out of the top 3 or the top 4, like, would that be enticing to go, hey, maybe we can go get her? Like, she's a top 2 level of a prospect and she's dropping for some reason. And she's, going back to what Brian was saying about a project kind of player. She's an older player who's been playing at a very high level for the best collegiate program in the country. Like, is there something like that, like an AZ Fudd or another player, where you may consider, like, hey, what does it take to actually move up?
I mean, just kind of knowing what we know about both Natalie Nakase and Ohemanianen, like, I could definitely see them being interested in both AZ Fudd and Awa Pham, no specific order. Now, in this hypothetical scenario, you're saying if AZ, say, fell outside of the top 4, I think they would strongly consider it, right? Trading up from 8 to 5. I know it's Chicago. I know they do some questionable things, but still, right? Like, it's at least doable where you're not necessarily having to mortgage a lot of future draft capital. But for example, if this was a couple months ago when we're like, okay, AZ and Awa, there's no way either of them are going outside the top 2. It'd be hard for them to trade from 8 to 2.
Yeah.
But I always felt like I still think Minnesota could entertain trading the number 2 pick.
Agreed.
Again,
Totally.
yeah. The cap hold, the cap hit for the number 2 overall pick. And, like, for such a veteran-laden team, is that how you want to, like, allocate your cap space? So that's why I always kind of thought maybe there could be, like, some kind of long shot trade between the Valkyries and the Minnesota Lynx. But, yeah, if either of them to drop, I think it would probably be those 2, though. I don't know if they would necessarily entertain, because we know Joe Lacob. I mean, he doesn't like to sacrifice future draft capital if he doesn't have to. And I'm not, like, trying to, again, throw shade at Joe Lacob, but that's the thing about the WNBA as opposed to the NBA, right? We know for a fact who's going to be in the upcoming draft classes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you want at least a shot at getting one of those players. If something happens, like if this season goes south, you want to have at least, a non-0% chance at getting like a Juju Watkins, a Hannah Hidalgo, or whomever you think, I'm high on Clara Strack, but
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's a good point. Like, unless you're like tapped into the high school scene for like the NBA, which you're really just seeing like these players one and done in college. But on the women's side, we've seen Juju since she was a freshman. We've seen Sarah Strong for now 2 years, and like I think we could probably confidently say like those 2 drafts are gonna be better than this one. So it's like I'm sure those first round picks probably have a lot of value to teams. And if you give up one of them, you probably could move up, right? If you just give up one of those picks, you probably could move up. But do you want to give up one of those picks, knowing that those 2 drafts are going to be pretty talented?
I mean, all the teams are saying the right things. We want to compete. We want to build a winning culture, but
they're not saying let's foul Seth Curry while we're winning.
When we're up, we're in the lead with 3:30 to go. I'm going to intentionally foul Seth Curry. I know. No, but I mean, I've been talking about this, right? Like, for 20 years, WNBA had the same 12 teams. 8 teams make the playoffs, right? You could literally just, kind of accidentally make the playoffs. But now we're at 15. Still only 8 teams going to the playoffs. It's a lot easier to tank now, and you have a lot more incentive to tank now. Like, I know people don't like to think tanking happens in the dub, but I don't know, man. These new front offices, you're hiring a lot of former NBA execs. I'm just saying, right? Like,
all right, here's the Kayla question. from Tafo155. How does Kayla reintegrate back into the team? And I think this question was based on the idea that she got hurt and the team did not really skip a beat from a winning perspective. So how do you reintegrate their lone all-star last year back into a team that seemed to gel with her out?
I mean, for me, I do think even again that our overall record was still pretty good. I don't believe in terms of net rating. Yeah, there wasn't much of a difference, right? After KT was ruled out with a season-ending injury. But if you look at it from game to game, we lacked a closer. I know VB, she did a great job in certain games, but again, right, when defense is just bogged down, when everybody's able to kind of like, especially like if we're like trying to force a switch and yet we're still not creating any separation, right? In those early games when the Valkyries were building momentum prior to KT going down, right? Like she was literally closing games. I mean, I think we could say that she essentially won us at least 4 of those, right? 4 or 5 in her fourth quarter heroics. I think she might not have to shoulder as much of a load this year, but I think that's still an element that she brings. Like, I don't think that her game necessarily requires us to deviate from structure. I think she's just a very intuitive and cerebral player that, Nakase's read and react system. I think she'll fit right back in. The question, though, is, again, depending on who we bring into the fold, will that affect KT's ability to kind of find her rhythm, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. While I think she did do great last season, let's be real, with a significantly higher usage than she had in her previous years, her efficiency went down significantly. So maybe we can try to help her find like that happy medium, right? Where like a slightly lower usage, more efficiency, and then all around, right, the ball zipping.
Cool. All right.
And I know the question wasn't even directed to me, but I almost wanted to echo your point of like.
Well, it was actually directed to you in the Discord, but I saved it for this.
Like, to echo your point though, is like I don't remember for fact, but I feel like didn't they kind of play well when the Eurobasket players left too? Like the record was still kind of like solid, like when KT was there, they were like doing pretty well. When the Eurobasket players left, they were doing pretty fine. And then when KT goes down, like they kind of end the season fine. I almost wonder, like, Natalie Nakase is like, just whoever's out there, just like they're gonna try their hardest, and like that's the culture they've built is, no star players, so everyone has to, step up a level.
Yeah, and again, like they did a great job in year one. They found ways to work within their limitations. That's kind of like how I like to characterize year one. But that's the thing. Can we expand those limitations? Right? I mean, again, we played at, I believe, the slowest pace in the league, frankly, because again, right, we just didn't have the ball handlers. We didn't have enough like, transition shooters or shot creators to be able to warrant playing at a higher pace. If you bring back KT and maybe bring in 1 or 2 more playmakers, can we get more closer to like league average or maybe better? I think it's well within reason. I like their kind of like pet plays always produced really quality looks. We just maybe didn't have the right personnel to cash in on those looks. So I think KT definitely helps, a long way in that. So I think I think she could definitely reintegrate. It's just, I'm curious how that's going to look given that, it's not the exact same supporting cast around her when she does suit up again.
Yeah. And I think like you and Kenzo said it, or it was in one of the 2 most recent pods, in the draft one or in the Kenzo one, where it's like, there's a year of tape on the Valkyries now. Like I think about, like NBA rookies where it's like that sophomore slump, or even like baseball players when the pitcher has their first start and they pitch well on the second start, it's like, okay, they have tape on them now, so they know what he's going to do. And so how are the Valkyries going to going to react to people who kind of know what they're going to do now. And so we'll see like how that plays out if they're able to get like a star player. Do you think they can get a star player?
Who do you think is like a star player? I genuinely ask that because that's what Kenzo and I were saying. Like, he believes we're going to get a star player, but like, okay, we're not getting like an Asia Wilson, right? Like,
Right.
even
No,
before,
yeah.
you know. So, what is a star player to you? Like, who fits that ilk?
I think a Kayla Copper is like even like I think she's like even higher than like like a regular star player, but like that's who I really want. I don't even know if she's totally like available. I haven't really gotten a sense on like that Phoenix team, even with like Alyssa Thomas on like what's going on over there. But I think like I mentioned earlier, yeah, like just bring in like a Kayla Copper, not just bring in a Kayla Copper. Like she's really good, but like her, I think Satu's a star, but who else? Who else is like like a multi-time all-star? That's kind of where my head's been up, but probably not the Asias, not the Nafisas, not the Alyssas, not the Briannas, not the Sabrinas, but like who's that next kind of level of player? I feel like that's maybe we can get someone there.
I think they can and will. I'm just not sure what position it's going to be. And I'm not sure which one is, like I feel like they have a really great pitch. I know I keep going back to centers, but like, again, I would say Ezzy is a star. I think it's debatable because since she's, a little bit younger, but Shakira Austin has star potential. I think she's trending in that direction, right? I think they're attainable. I think they could really entice them to come to the Bay. But yeah, like it's just going to be interesting to see if they can do it at multiple positions. But I think they will get like one like star caliber player, at least one.
Okay, let's make a quick prediction here. Now, Conrado, he already put out his list of the top 7. So you do not have to spoil your 8 here. We can just talk through some players that I'm actually interested in who Brian thinks that will be available, and just make a prediction. Who do you think the Valkyries take on Monday with the 8th pick in the WNBA draft, Brian?
Oh wow, I thought you were gonna not go me first. It's been kind of it's been a hard. I feel like it's been a harder draft to predict. Like I feel like I've seen last week all the draft analysts said Nell. This week they're all saying Gianna. This next week they're all saying Tanaya. Like I don't really totally know who's gonna fall. Like I feel like I'm probably just gonna say that I think they go Tanaya Latson. See, I'm not saying this confidently, but I still think Tanaya is like pretty talented, and not pretty talented. I think she's really talented. I think that if her ceiling hits, like we're talking about like a go-to scorer, and you're missing out on some of that Carla getting to the rim. Like I've brought this game up multiple times, but it's only because I went there. Las Vegas Aces at Las Vegas during the NBA Summer League. Me and my brother, we went to the game versus the Valkyries, and I forget if it was Veronica or Kayla. I want to say it was Veronica, but Jackie Young was on one of them like glue, and we could not really generate any offense because no one could get to the bucket. And so when Carla came in and you had Jackie Young just locking down Veronica, Carla was able to get to the basket pretty easy. And I know Tip Hayes does some of that, but we wonder if Tip Hayes is going to be back on the team, if how healthy she's going to be.
Right.
So I'm just like, we need someone who can do that again. Like someone needs to be on this team that can get to the rim. And you see Tanaya's quick first step, her twitchiness, and her ability to just get to the rim, and just like the way she rises when she goes to the bucket. It's just like wow, you're like insanely athletic. Like I think that I'm gonna guess Tanaya.
I will go Jaquez. I will go with the UCLA guard. What do you think, Conrado? You have any thoughts on who's going to be available and who you would pick?
I mean, I understand why a lot of fans think it's going to be one of the UCLA guards, right? It's going to be either Gabriela Jaquez or Gianna Kneepkens. Obviously, we just talked about the Valkyries needing to add more shooting. Obviously, right? At least a top 2 shooter in this draft class, right? Gianna Newkins and AZ foot. I don't think many people would question that. Gabriela Jaquez, I don't want to like belittle or downplay her game, but I do think it's fair to call her like a Swiss Army knife, right? She is that do it all kind of glue guy, but does it at a high level, right? I don't want to make it seem like she's a jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation. But these last couple days, I guess, yeah, also with the Carla news, but even before that, I don't know. I feel like Tanai Latson might be the pick for us. For a lot of the things that Brian just highlighted. Obviously, you kind of want to try to replace the rim pressure that Carla had provided this team, because honestly, you know me, I'm a nerd. I like to look at the analytics between her, VB, and Tip Hayes. Right, Valks actually had like an amazing guard trio in terms of pressuring the rim, right? Turning drives into either like points, at the rim or getting to the free throw line. The three of them combined. Latson obviously would bring that element, but I think kind of like, looking over her entire season and then looking at her work at Florida State, I feel like people are kind of down on Latson after the season. Obviously, you point to her averages and her totals. They're down across the board, but I don't know. I feel like in playing with South Carolina, she kind of proved that she can play within structure. The problem is that the structure lacked spacing, right? I mean, it wasn't really until the tournament that Agat Macaire started getting like, significantly like, longer stretches of playing time. But you saw like in the later rounds, right, when she shared the court with Tessa Johnson and Macaire, right? It's not just about trying to capitalize off their spacing, but again, that's when you start to see just how decisive she can be in attacking the gaps, really small confines of space. So, because a lot of people say like, oh, she's just, like this transition scorer, right? Like she can only be successful with like points off turnovers. But I think she kind of showed that she has a lot more half court discipline and creation than she was given credit for. And I think with a team like the Valkyries, who do find a lot of creative ways to kind of move the ball with a lot of like swing screens in the mid post, she could fit that system, and we've seen that, like, I don't think anyone necessarily looks at her as a defender, but she competes. And I think, Natalie Nakase really values that. I absolutely could see one of the UCLA guards, but I still think Latson provides a higher level upside than the Bruins. So
Totally.
I'm with Brian. I think Latson might be more appealing.
Okay, where can people find all of your work if they want to follow you, if they are not already following you? I know you're doing stuff for a few different spots, podcast wise, and the Center Hub stuff. So help people find you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, as always, you can find me on Twitter, X at CP3_777. And at the top of my profile, you'll see the link to my main podcast, East Meets West. Really ramped up a lot of WNBA content lately. So if you would subscribe and check out the videos, drop a like, drop a comment, anything, everything, it's all appreciated. And as Gabe and Brian were saying, you can also find me at the Center Hub at the Center Hub _BB. I do write, like on occasion. A lot more of my content is like in, video or audio form. Just easier for me to get my ideas out quicker. But yeah, you can definitely find me there.
All right. So check out, and then soon, by the time people listen to this, it'll probably be out, the rest of your mock draft for the full first round. And yeah, this was a blast. And, the last time we chatted, I was like, I can't wait for the draft, because then we'll have you on again, and we'll reach out to you. We won't bother you too much, but we'll reach out at some point again and bring you on and talk Valk stuff, because I think it's going to be a really fun season. Now, I think a lot of some people are kind of like, they want to have realistic expectations. Like, is it going to be the same as last year? Are they going to be able to sneak up on teams? Is there going to be more expectation? It's going to be all of those things, but I'm so excited to see what year 2 looks like because year 1 was so fun. So we'll bring you back on whenever you have some time and we'll chat about the season. And then, yeah, that is it from here. So thanks to Conrado. For Brian, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.